Welcome to this week's episode of the Cancer CureBe Podcast. I'm Russell Peden. I'm your host today. And today we've got another amazing podcast interview, another great story from a great guy, good friend of mine and fellow business partner in the world of Legal Shield. Today, I can't wait for you guys to hear this amazing story from Mr. Johnnie Jones and how cancer has affected him and how he's now using his whole cancer journey to affect the lives of others. So without further ado, I'm going to go out to my good friend, Johnnie Jones. Johnnie, welcome to the Cancer CureBe Podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I feel honored to be on this because I know your story and I've heard your story for years. I didn't realize we'd have something in common in your story. But now I feel honored to be able to come here and to talk about the journey.
Well, man, I appreciate you taking time. As I think we were having dinner one night when we both realized that we had this in common. And we have a lot of other things in common, but this is one. I guess it's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because they're both now cancer free, but it's a bad thing that it had to be cancer that to be the one thing that we do have in common outside of business and personal development, stuff like that. So anyway, man, let's get right into it, Johnnie. I want people to hear your amazing story. So, man, go ahead and just briefly share with our listeners your cancer journey. Tell us how you discovered it, and just briefly share your story, and then we'll get into how you're using cancer to help others a little bit later in the interview. Go for it.
So last year in March, they actually had me going to do some blood work for other things, because I'm still recovering from a stroke I had 6 years ago, and there's a couple other things I was going through. So they did it, and the doctor came up and said, I don't like the numbers. We're going to do a CAT scan in September. So I'm not thinking it's a big deal because it's 4 months away,
right?
And so in September, we do the CAT scan. I go through that. They say, well, Mr. Jones, we saw two things we don't really like. So we're going to do a biopsy. I didn't understand what the biopsy was going to be. Yeah. And we went through the biopsy in December 22nd. See, I know dates and times now. So we went in on December 22nd. It was a 7:30 a.m. appointment. We went through. They did the biopsy. That was the most uncomfortable I've ever been in my entire life. And they didn't tell me to stretch and get ready for it. They just told me to do it. So I go through the biopsy. And then in January, the first Monday in January, or the second Monday, that first Monday in January, I got a call and they said, Mr. Jones, you do indeed have cancer. And then because they told me I had cancer, they said, here's the plan. And they gave me a plan. They wanted me to come in. And what I appreciate about my doctors, they gave me every example of everything I could do. They said, you can have surgery. Surgery will remove it. And then if there's anything else, we'll make sure you have some kind of radiation. Or you can go to radiation. But if you do radiation, then you won't ever be able to have surgery. And they said, or you can sit and be still and we can monitor it. Well, the third one didn't sound good to me, but it was still an option on the table. I appreciate they said that.
Yeah.
But for me, I had talked to people that already had prostate cancer, so I kind of knew what I wanted.
Right.
But I'm glad they made me still confirm of what I wanted. Yeah. So I go through that, and I had some events and things happening in my life. So I was asking them, how do I make all this work? How do I still live my life and have cancer? I said, the cancer surgery, and they said, well, we want to do it in April. I said, can we do it at the end of April? And they said, yeah, in fact, we'll do it May 14th. Because as you know, we have an event.
I got a convention coming up in April. I can't.
Exactly. And so they did it May 14th. And here's what I'll tell. Here's one of the most important things that I realized. Having good people around you is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And having people who don't treat you like a victim is even more important because they still challenged me as if I didn't have cancer as far as making sure I did things. And I never had time to stop and think. Now, I did think when I was going to the doctors and they were telling me the different things, that all things you had to do. And I had some extra things because I had a stroke 6 years prior. So they wanted to make sure I was still good, check my heart. I've done more ultrasounds than any of my kids or that have had babies. I've done more than that in that process. But then we go, and I never got nervous until the day I went to the hospital for surgery. When I touched the door, I started getting nervous.
Yeah.
And we go up, and I can tell you the path. We walk in the door, we make a right, go to the elevator, go up to a second floor, make a right, and the room's the first turn on the left. I still remember all of that. You get there, there's a board, and the board was really cool because it actually showed everybody who's having surgery, the amount of time they're expecting you to be in surgery, and everything, your name, so you could find out what kind of surgery you had and everything else. And so we go there, and as I'm going through surgery, as I'm going through the getting ready for surgery, I'm joking with them because something was wrong with the scale. I said, well, great, well, let's make up our weight. So I'm still having fun and going through that process, and then they maybe get ready, get undressed, and put the robe and all that on, lay on the table. And then I was like, oh, I guess I wonder how this is gonna feel when I'm done. Like I never had that thought because I never stopped, And so then we go into surgery, and I'm joking around with everybody in the room. And the anesthesiologist says, how you feeling? I said, good. He said, take a deep breath. I said, okay. He said, okay, you sound good. I'm gonna put this on you. He said, I want you to take 3 deep breaths. He said, take a deep breath. I said, oh, that smells good. Take another deep breath. I don't remember nothing until I woke up from surgery. Like I was done. And when I came out, they had me sitting in the table and everything, and I just felt funny. And the whole thing I was thinking about is, how do I feel different? Like that was my question right before I went to sleep. Well, how was I going to feel different?
Right.
Because they were doing something to you, and I've never had major surgery. I've never had anything like that. What was going to be different?
Yeah.
And there was a couple different feelings because everything's swollen because they blow air into you and all like that. So it was just an interesting feeling. And then, you and me talk about having the catheter and that amazing feeling that you have for the 5 days that I had it. Oh, yes. And so I had that, and really it wasn't so bad until the last 2 days. That's really where it was really bad for me. And then you go into the hospital, they take it out. It takes seconds to take out, and no pain. I was thinking it was going to be painful, at least a little. No pain. They took it out, and immediately I felt so much better. And then it was just a matter of listening to the doctors, asking them questions about what could I do, what couldn't I do, what was the schedule, and they said, okay, Mr. Jones, your schedule is going to be a 5-day schedule, or it could have been 7 days, but it was 5 days for the catheter. There was a 4 to 6 week schedule. There's a 1 to 3 year schedule. He said, these are your schedules. So the first one, the 4 to 6 weeks is about swimming, everything had to heal on the outside and everything starting to heal on the inside. And then they removed and they rebuilt your system. So you're a different person internally from that point. So they rebuilt that, and that's the year to 3 years. And they can't really tell you how long it's going to be because everybody's different. So they can only give you an estimate range. And so the recovery, some days have been really good. Some days not so good. But here's what I learned as well. My energy level was really low before surgery. It picked up after surgery. Yeah, so even though they didn't tell me that was a symptom, it had to be because my energy level fell off around this time last year. It started to get lower and lower and lower. Going into the winter time, I was at an all-time low. By the time we went to convention, that first day, I had to go home and take a nap. The second day, I had to go home and take a nap. It was just bad, like that. And so I was really weak. And yet, that's not, I went and looked at stuff later, and there was no thing that said symptoms weak. But I was really weak. But after surgery, I wasn't as weak. I still need my nap from time to time now, but I don't feel weak. Like walking distance, doing the things that I do now.
Right.
It was a struggle to do it back then.
Interesting.
So go ahead.
No, I didn't know if you were done. But so Johnnie, you didn't, again, unlike many people who, when I had cancer, the way I discovered I had cancer, I had a small lump in my right armpit, kind of breast area. It was about the size of a ping pong ball, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And of course, everyone thought, I got a tumor. And what it was just an enlarged lymph node. So in my case, I had this little lump, and my wife, Carol, says, oh, you got to check that out. We need to get that checked. We need to go to the doctor. I said, no, like I got stuff going on. We got the convention coming up. We got this, I'll take care. I'll go to the doctor later on. But that little mass in my armpit just, like I said, it was a ping pong ball. And then it was about the size of a golf ball. And then it just got to be a little bit bigger and bigger and bigger, about the size of a tennis ball. And then by the time I ended up having to go to the hospital for emergency chemos, because it was about the size of a good size orange, maybe even a grapefruit. I had to keep my arm propped up and everything. But anyway, my point is that I was able to, I had something, I could feel something different in my body. In your case, you didn't have any idea. You just going for your regular kind of post-stroke checkup. I'm sure you probably go to the doctors several times a year as a result of having a stroke 6 years ago. So you're just doing what you have been doing for the last 5 or 6 years, just going in for your checkup, blood work, making sure everything's still looking good. And that's when, right. So you didn't like feel anything. Is that correct? You didn't feel like you had cancer. You just went in and they told you, hey, we found something that we don't like. So that's interesting, because I think most people, I think everyone's different, as you already said. I think most people think, oh, I'm going to feel something. But I with you, man, when I went in, well, I went through chemo, and I didn't do the surgery option like you did. But I remember when we found out that the cancer spread in my brain, they told me they had to do this brain surgery. And, but I'll never forget that day, man. I like you, I'm like, oh, what's going to be different? How am I going to feel? I ended up with a big scar on the top of my head, obviously they drilled into my skull, but I like you, man, I could certainly relate to the day I had that brain surgery, and just wondering. But I had, like you, I had about 20 people out in the waiting room praying for me. My wife, our friends Will, Strada Dazzy, and dozens of other people just out there just praying that the surgery would go well. They weren't sure because no one knew exactly, but anyway, again, enough about me. What I wanted to hit there is that, unlike many people, you didn't have any idea that you had cancer. Just your doctors on a regular routine checkup said, hey, we want to check this out, and this looks different. And my wife, on the other hand, she, like me, had felt a small lump in her breast, which is what led her to ultimately end up having to have surgery and cancer treatment. But most people, unlike you, have a way of, they can tell they have cancer because something's funky going on in their body. But so anything else you want to share with your story? So you went routine checkup. They said, oh, you've got this. So that means you didn't have any sort of, you weren't really like, what stage did they give you is what I'm trying to go. Because stage you didn't, 2. So you were stage 2s. And for those that know, what staging is that anything, if they detect cancer any above or below your diaphragm, that's stage 1. Everybody's stage 1, I should say. And then if they detect it in more than one spot, then again, above or below your diaphragm, they call that stage 2. If it's above and below your diaphragm, that's stage 3. And of course, if it goes to your lungs or your brain, then you're stage 4. At least that's what I learned in my cancer research. So you're stage 2. That's what I was when I got it. So again, no weird feelings, no lumps. You just routine checkup. And so you had a kind of a low stage prostate cancer. So nothing, our good friend Brooks Werkheiser, as you know, he had stage 4 prostate cancer. But again, like you, he didn't feel any different. I wonder if it's just a man thing, but he still had stage 4 prostate cancer. But
prostate cancer could be different for different people. It typically is not aggressive, but mine wasn't aggressive, but it was trying to be. So like after you have prostate cancer, they remove it and they study it immediately and they give you the results of it. And they actually told me that mine was at the point where it was trying to get into the bloodstream and go to other places. So it was right at that point. So had I taken the option of wait and see, right, I can't imagine how bad that would have been.
Right.
Don't know what radiation would look like. So when they diagnose you, there's a test. And they said, because I'm with the VA, they said it's one of the most expensive tests they do at that hospital. And it's a different CAT scan. And they put what I call a dye, or a trace. They call it a tracer. I call it a dye. But they put it in there 30 minutes before they do the CAT scan. Right. And it looks at the rest of the body. So they didn't find anything anywhere. That's why we were comfortable with doing the surgery, because they didn't find it anywhere else. But I can imagine if it had been 6 months later, the cancer might have already started to go to the other places in my body.
Yeah, and then that would have been a whole different kind of situation for you.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, man, so it was concentrated right there in your prostate. So I agree. It seems like surgery was probably the best option. Um, well, man, that's interesting. Most of the people that I've interviewed here on the Cancer CureBe podcast have, like me, they have sought other treatment options, be it alternative cancer. And I was cured at the Rubio Cancer Center in Mexico, like our friend Brooks was, and many others that we've referred down there. As my listeners know, I've told that story many times in the podcast. So, I mean, you went through, I mean, obviously through the VA. So that's, that's the Veterans Administration. So you went to the VA health system. So you basically, you went through regular, what we would call conventional cancer treatment. And
Yes, sir.
had surgery, and conventional treatment, there's surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation. Those are the three options that they've had those for about 50 years. All those three have the chemos are better. The radiation is more targeted now, laser, and same thing with the surgery. Now they use, computer guided surgery and computer aided radiation. So it's all those treatments, although they're conventional, they've been around for 50 years, they're just better today than they were, 30 or 40 or 50 years ago. So, man, you went to the conventional route and had surgery. And so how you doing now? Cancer, how's your body? How's your cancer? Any follow-up visit with your doctor? I mean, it's been 3 or 4 months now since you had your surgery. Everything good?
Everything's good. I'm following with the doctor, everything they're telling me to do. Like they have me doing physical therapy, and because your body has to relearn certain things. Like when they do surgery and they remove something, you have to reteach your body certain things. So I had to go through that. And I asked her, she said, well, you can choose to go to a clinic outside of the VA, or you can go to VA. I said, let me ask you a question. If I was your brother, where would you tell me to go? She said, to the VA. I said, put the appointment in the books.
There you go.
Because the one thing that I realized is that you only know what you know, and you're capped by what you don't know. Right. And you don't know that you don't know it. Yeah. So you have to learn to trust. And here's the thing I left out that I gotta say, it was God, because nothing in everything that happened was a coincidence. If you think about it, I had a stroke. What did the stroke cause me to do? It caused me to rely on the hospital more. It caused me to go in and get my checkups and everything else more. So then I ended up having something where it was just blood. They were testing my blood, and they were like, this number's too high.
Yeah.
We don't think anything's wrong, but we're still going to take precaution.
Yeah.
Made them do a CAT scan. And the CAT scan, they saw something on my prostate that they didn't like, which made me do the biopsy. They did the biopsy. And then one of the things that kept happening is they were like, we specialize in this surgery, and so that's God, destiny, when everything falls in line that way. There was nothing that fell out that I had to worry about.
Yeah. I mean, so your doctor's prostate cancer surgery was their specialty. So again, that wasn't God. I mean, that wasn't a coincidence. That was, as you said, that was just God lining everything up. And I believe that, man. I believe that I don't believe in accidents. I believe in what I call virtuitous intersection, which means everything happens for a reason, and it's the reason that God lined them up the way they're supposed to go. All right, man. Look, I won't. Unless you have something else you want to add to your story, I appreciate you sharing that point about it being all about God and not being a coincidence. So, Johnny, last thing, as my listeners know, the Cancer CureBe Podcast. The whole idea of it is we're not just interviewing and showcasing people like myself and yourself who've gone through a cancer journey and come out on the other side healed or cured, but they're also using their cancer journey or their cancer experience to make a difference in the lives of others. So would you mind sharing with our listeners kind of what your take is? How has cancer affected you in a way that now you are using that whole experience to help others?
So in December, I asked God, I said, God, why now? I like everything that I want to happen is starting to happen all around me, success in my business, everything. Why now? And God said, your testimony. And I started to understand that my testimony is powerful in different ways. For some people, they'll now go get tested. For other people, they'll understand that you were not a victim of a circumstance. We're just in a circumstance, because they watched me do things that I was doing, and then they found out I had cancer. And they're like, wow,
Wow.
And so I'm being able to help people in my journey just by telling my story.
Right.
And first it brings glory to God, but number two, it actually helps people. It aligns me with people, because when I had the stroke, I didn't tell anybody. It was like 5 people that knew I had a stroke.
Wow.
When I had cancer, I told a lot of people, and it connected me. I connected with you because I was telling my story.
Yeah.
I talked to the daddies, so it's like it's bringing me in line with different people that had never been in my journey. Had I just been quiet, if I'd have just quietly went about it, I wouldn't have met so many people. And I found out so many people had been through it, or they had a family member that had been through it, which allowed them to coach me and educate me on things I need to know. Some people had it a long time ago, and it's so different now. The recovery is much faster now. Well, 1 to 3 years is not fast to me, but 1 to 3 years is a fast recovery compared to what it used to be.
Right.
So I'm able to understand that. But here's the deal. You said this a couple times, that men typically will say, I'll get to it. But we as men, because of the responsibilities that we undertake as in our families, in society,
right,
we can't do that. We can't put that at risk. We can't sit back and say, I'll get to it. We got to take action on it. So if my story, the uncomfortableness that I went through, the pain that I've gone through will help somebody else not have to go through that, then that's, to me, the win. And I think that's what I'm able to do, is to share the journey, share the stories, and help people understand why they need to go look after their health.
No, man, I appreciate that. I mean, so I agree. I mean, that's why I wanted to emphasize the fact that you, unlike many people who are diagnosed with some form of cancer, have something that sparks it for them, like a lump, or like in my case, or my wife's case, or a pain. You didn't have any pain, no discomfort, no lumps, no mass, at least that you could detect in your body. So, but as you said, because God gave you like a stroke and you went through that and then came through that, you were more conscientious about your health and your follow-up exams. And, and as a result, when they did discover this prostate cancer, because of your elevated levels in your blood, it all worked out just the way it was supposed to. So if anything, you're letting people know, look, especially men, hey, go get that checkup. Yeah, nobody wants to go in there and get that checkup that they tell us you had to get around 40, 50 years old, because just the thought of it is not very pleasant. But hey, if it can save you from having to go through what I went through, or what Johnny's gone through, guys, I'm telling you, it's worth it. So guys, I know we as men, we try to be men, but look, be a man and understand, as a husband, as a father, or as a leader, as a brother, the best thing you can do is stay healthy for your family. So go get those checkups and do what you're supposed to do, and follow your doctor's advice in terms of your annual health checkup. So I appreciate that, man. That's good. That's good advice. And as you said, ultimately God's in control. So, because of your personal development, I think anyone listening could tell, hey, this guy's got a great attitude. And it's because we understand the importance of, feeding our head daily, right? FMHD, feed my head daily, because what we put in, it will determine what comes out. Going through my journey, I felt like I was perfectly healthy through the whole, even though I knew I had cancer, was going through treatment. I felt like, because I told my body, hey, we're going to beat this, and God's going to do it for us. But we got to have that good attitude about it, because so many people, I've run across 2 different kind of cancer patients. Some people who, like you and I, hey, this is not something that's happening to me, it's happening for me. And which means I got to roll with it and go through it and come out the other side. Where I meet other people or you and I, it's the same question. I'll put it this way. Some people ask the question when they get diagnosed with cancer, God, why me? Like, why me? Why me? Why this? And then where you and I think we ask, hey, God, why, why me? Like, show me what this is all about. Like, you and I, we want to know, like, what are we supposed to learn out of this? How am I supposed to bring you glory as a result? At least that's how I looked at it, man. That sounds like you were the same way. Like this, okay, I've got cancer. So now what? What's the next step? How is this going to benefit me, benefit my family, help me benefit others? How is this going to ultimately bring glory to my God? And well, other people, they just become their cancer. You know what I mean? Like they feel like they have to have cancer. They look in the mirror, oh, I got cancer, and they just end up becoming their cancer, and they never really get on the other side of it, if that makes sense. So anyway, brother, I appreciate you sharing with us your amazing story and your incredible positive attitude, which I think is probably 80% of the recovery, bro. I think most people who have gone through cancer, talked to many like chemo nurses and at infusion centers, and they said the people who come in with the best attitudes tend to be the ones who make it through and come out on the other side cured or healthy as a result. So I think that's probably why you and I are sitting here on this podcast, because we believe our attitude determines our altitude. And in this case, it determines our health as well. So, brother, I appreciate you taking the time to join us here on the Cancer CureBe Podcast. It's a pleasure. Love that. Maybe have you back in another episode, just kind of give us an update, maybe in 6 months or a year. But thanks again for your time. Anything else you want to share before we go?
So it was interesting that I heard your story, but that was one of those, it's not happening to me. I don't really know him. That's not happening to me, but it sounds like a good story.
Yeah.
And, I often wonder, why did he make the decision that he made? He went down there, but so you're so disconnected from that, never realizing that that was a precursor of something that was going to happen in my life. And now I don't necessarily have to say questions because I understand it from going through it. Sometimes you can't understand how people think and what they decide to do until you're actually in a situation that's similar, so you can see it. So I have no questions for you about that now, because I understand what that looks like.
No, people often ask, well, why did you go to Mexico? Well, I felt like they didn't really give me any options. The options here for the cancer that I had, and I had a very aggressive blood cancer, large B lymphoma, and large B cell lymphoma. But I didn't like the treatment options I had here, and and there's the quality of life, and I didn't appreciate the whole treatment. So, but as you'd have it, God, we have a mutual friend, Brooks Werkheiser, who went to Mexico and had stage 4 prostate cancer, and everybody knows my story. But people ask me all the time why, and I go, well, because that's where I felt God led me to go, and as a result, I've been healed, cured, as I always like to say, cured and healed, and I've been able to refer other people to the same place, most of them have had the same exact results, cancer-free, my wife included, friends and family, business associates like yourself. But more, it's not about Mexico. It's about letting people know that, hey, as I already said, this doesn't happen to you. It happens for you. And if you'll have that attitude, this wasn't meant to be a cancer or woe is me cancer type podcast. As much as I hope that every episode will inspire someone. Like I hope someone will listen to Johnnie Jones' story today and go, man, I need to go make sure I get a checkup. Or I need to I should let my dad listen to this because my dad had a stroke 3 years ago, or someone will take their health more serious as a result of listening to your story. Or if they have someone who's in a situation like mine, they'll look at other alternative options. Maybe their doctors, because there's so many people today whose doctors are not giving them any good prognosis. Hey, well, you know what? We can continue to give you chemo, but it's ultimately it's not going to help you. So what do you do with those people? And I hear those people, they reach out to me all the time. And of course I share my story and get the information they need to talk with Dr. Rubio and see if he can help them. But yeah, bro, you're exactly right. It's about finding out if, we always say you never know when you think it was going to happen to you, because when it does, it's going to happen to, we have to be prepared, whether that means we got to have our state stuff in place. And that's our specialty as well on the other side on business, in terms of business, or just, as you already pointed out, just making sure that you get a little bit more purposeful about your health and your checkups so that you can stay on top of this stuff so that you don't have to go through any other more daunting situations or surgeries or things like that. But man, once again, I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your positive attitude. Thanks for sharing your amazing story. And thanks again for joining us on the Cancer CureBe podcast. So again, guys, thanks for listening. Again, be sure to share this episode with people. If you know someone who you think will benefit from Johnny's story or any one of the other stories that of our podcast guests over the last 10 or so episodes, be sure to share it with someone. It can end up changing your life, changing their life. And all you did was just simply share this episode or one of the other episodes with someone, and you can make a difference in someone's life. That's what this podcast is all about, making a difference in people's lives through amazing stories about how people who've gone through cancer or some other life-threatening ordeal and come out on the other side and are now using that situation to impact the lives of others. So thanks again for listening. Be sure to subscribe, like, or comment on the podcast. And thanks again, Johnny, for your time. Goodbye.
My pleasure.